Okay, I'd like to talk about a few ideas that I've used over this backing track that I just played. I'm going to take you through some kind of harmonic minor style scales that I like to use quite a lot when I'm improvising or doing anything within this style. The first scale shape I want to show you is going to look like this. Okay, so we're taking a group of 7 notes and we're just playing them in octaves. So we're starting on the 10th fret of the high E string, playing 9 and then 7. It's entirely up to you. I mean, most of the stuff that I play is picked, or mostly picked with a few hammer-ons and pull-offs here and there. So okay, you're right, 10, 9 and 7 on the high E string. The same on the B string, with the added 6th fret on the B string, which kind of gives it that dark harmonic minorish sound, you know. That kind of sort of classical thing that you associate with, I suppose, quite a lot of this style of metal guitar playing. And then what we're doing is just taking that in octaves, basically. And I'm just applying a different kind of pattern to that sort of scale. I mean, there is one picked run in there which looks like this, and it ends on that 4th fret on the A string. But again, that's just taking the pattern that we've been using, just applying a different set of order of notes, basically. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain to you exactly, you know, what you should be doing at any given time when you've got a scale. I mean, when you give someone a scale, it's, you know, straight up, straight down, that kind of thing. But the things that make scales interesting are how you kind of sequence some of this stuff. You don't have to do it across all, 6 guitar strings or whatever. You can figure out your own little sequences within, just a small area. You might want to choose some hammer-ons and pull-offs that you might put in there. That kind of thing, where you're not picking all the notes but you're adding in some hammer-ons and pull-offs. That kind of stuff can be really effective. I mean, if you want to move out of that as well, so, I mean, just to recap, this is the first scale shape that I use in the song. So if you want to kind of break out of that, there's some other cool things that you can do, or scale shapes, which I like to use. The next one up from that is going to look like this. Okay, so it's got that same sort of sound to it again, but this time it's probably a bit more of a vertical scale shape rather than playing through octaves, which might be a little bit easier for you initially if you've not played anything like this before. So the fret numbers for this are going to be 14, 13, 10 on the high E string, 14, 12, 10 on the B string, then you've got 13, 11, 10 on the G. So you've already kind of got that evil sort of sound. Okay, moving on from that, we've got 12, 11 and 9 on the D string. Then the same frets on the A string with the added 8th fret on the A string. And then moving down to the low E string, we've got 7, 9 and 10. Okay, so we're starting to build up a good idea of what sort of things we can do playing in this style. Some other cool stuff as well that you could do is playing these scales on one string. So you can have things like playing scales like this is a good way of being able to get in between different 6-string scales that you might use across the whole guitar. So I mean, you've seen guys like Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert use this kind of technique all the time, where they play the scales up on one string and then they'll come down, basically a whole scale shape from the high E to the low E sort of thing. So at a slow tempo, the sort of thing I'm talking about would be this kind of thing. That kind of thing. So at faster tempo you might associate the sound as something like this. Okay, so using that as a something in your arsenal to be able to get from one scale shape to another is something that is used quite a lot by guitar players. So it's kind of worth knowing what the scale is on just one string before maybe applying it to all the strings. So what I was just playing there was 7, 9, 10 on the high E string, or starting on the 10, then moving up to the 13, then playing 9 and 10, and then 13 on the high E. This is all on the high E string. Up to 14. So basically you're still playing the notes that you did previous to that, you're just adding in one extra note each time. Extra note, extra note, extra note, extra note, extra note, and so on and so forth. So basically that is the sound that you want, and the key note that you want to be targeting is so that's the real difference. So you might play that scale like this, but the thing that makes it sound different is that one note. You've got that note that you are sort of like trying to target the whole time when playing this stuff. So if you're thinking about what note you should be landing on, that's kind of a good idea as a sort of thing that you'd be looking out for while playing any of these kind of scales. Okay, another cool thing that you can try is using string skipping in this kind of harmonic minor context. The cool thing about that is everything's the same. So on the G string, for example, and the E string, the notes are going to be exactly the same. So for example, this kind of thing. Start to kind of just build on going up and down, and then you can experiment with different things. I mean, there's no harm in experimenting with the note, because the same notes are already there. So whether you do or all those patterns and everything are using exactly the same notes. So the only limitations of where you can go with that are purely on your own imagination, and whether you can start to think, well, maybe I'll change this up, or I'll do something else, or add some taps in. But the fundamental basic shape is it's as simple as just playing 4 notes. So when you start on the 7th fret of the G string, play the 10th fret on the G, 7th fret of the high E string, and then the 10th fret on the high E string, those patterns are going to be the same. You just replace your 3rd finger with your 1st finger and move it up. So basically your fingers don't have to change position. so you can just kind of do that. But obviously, you know, playing just straight up and straight down sometimes isn't always the most exciting thing to listen to. So you might want to sequence some of this stuff. So so yeah, maybe trying something like, which has got more of a kind of pulse and a rhythm to it. So yeah, it makes it a little bit more interesting. I'll just play that pattern a little bit slower. So it kind of has, you know, a bit more flow to it once you kind of speed it up. Some of these licks just sound a bit weird when you slow them down, but obviously for the benefit of learning, you need to be able to see what's going on. But you know, the possibilities with this kind of thing are endless really. It just depends on how much you want to play around with it. But the basic concept of moving that around is pretty simple. So you can use that same concept if you want to add taps in there. So bearing in mind that that is your shape anyway, if you move it up, what you could do is just pretend that your third finger is your first finger, and then just tap the next set of notes. So you end up with like a 3-note per string style lick instead of doing everything 2-note per string. And just move it up the same way as you would normally. So that kind of brings me to the way I would sort of finish a lick like that with tapping. So. Okay, so when you get past the string skipping, basically that shape kind of moves back in a diagonal sort of fashion. It just drops down a fret each time you change string. And you're basically just tapping, pulling off and hammering on again, that sort of thing. So again, the concept of it is pretty simple really, like most of the stuff that I try and achieve on guitar. I suppose it's just maybe the sort of technical delivery of it is the main thing that needs the most work. You know, especially with playing things that are purely technical rather than you know, phrasing and all that kind of stuff, which we'll get to in a minute. So yeah, I mean, you basically just need to get that under your fingers, being able to tap and pull off. And then hammer on, moving up. Okay, so basically there's some cool things that I like to do in that kind of style. And the backing track actually changes from that kind of sound to more of a sort of traditional minor kind of thing, where, you know, some more pentatonic scales and stuff like that come into play. So, you know, it's just improvising around, you know, a first position sort of F sharp minor pentatonic. And then just moving around the different positions to do with that. For me, you know, like, I like to try and move the intervals around quite a lot. And also, you know, within a pentatonic scale, there are some other things that you can play, like arpeggios and stuff like that, which is this kind of thing. Which I would consider mainly a pentatonic scale, but you could argue that there's an arpeggio in there as well. But I'm kind of using, visually, I'm looking at it as a pentatonic scale to try and separate the notes. And then, you know, coming down a pentatonic scale and then mixing it up, going up an arpeggio, because that string skip arpeggio that I'm looking at there, the pentatonic scale is slap bang right in the middle of that. So again, you know, you can kind of move in and around. I mean, I'm just kind of messing around to try and, you know, deliver some sort of explanation about what goes through my brain when I'm thinking about improvising or writing solos or anything like that. And so, you know, I'll always probably gravitate towards the root note and then figure out my pentatonic scales. And then obviously, you know, within that there's a load of different arpeggio options as well and stuff like that. I mean, as far as note choice, I mean, I try and pick notes that sound good over the backing chord, and also try and create something which has got some kind of vocal melody quality to it, so it doesn't sound like it's wandering the whole time. You know, there's always a purpose to everything I try and write or do. I mean, I think for the listener it's slightly annoying when you listen to stuff that just kind of wanders and doesn't really latch on to anything that's going on around it, you know, so it ends up isolating the instrument on its own rather than being part of a band or part of the track or part of anything that you're trying to do. I mean, even when you're playing stuff that's really technical, you still want it to fit, you know, almost perfectly over the backing track. Well, at least that's my view. You know, whenever I try and play anything or write anything or do anything like that, I try and get it to fit so it sounds like it's intended rather than something that, oh yeah, I just did that by mistake or that kind of thing. So, you know, my sort of like target notes would be something like... either kind of roots, fifths or ninths or something like that are always things that I gravitate towards, you know, when I'm playing. And also I like to move out of the pentatonic scale as well, rather than just be stuck in the box the whole time. So I might kind of move out. You know, so I'd start to move and use the different positions to move out of that. Just to give me a few more options melodically and technically. Okay, some other cool melodic ideas within this track that I played, I suppose would be like over what you would say would be the chorus section. I mean, there's a couple of phrasing things, but also it's sort of like note choice, trying to follow the chords as best I can, kind of on the fly sort of thing. I mean, a lot of this does come down to just kind of like natural. You know, I'll just sit there and jam and go, oh yeah, that sounds alright, and then do that and then work on it and build on it and all that kind of stuff really. A lot of people do ask me, like, which is quite a hard question for any guitar player really, is like, how do you go about creating melody? How do you do that? Why did you go from that arpeggio to that arpeggio? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And it's like, you know, it just kind of happens. You just hear like what comes next. You play a certain thing, go, oh yeah, what if I try that? What if I try that? I mean, everything you try is not necessarily going to end up being the best thing for the song. But the whole point about, you know, being able to have a recording thing in front of you and, you know, try licks out and stuff is to sort of take yourself out of the equation when you record anything, listen to it back, and if you're happy with it then, you know, you're taking yourself away from it and you're not concentrating on purely playing and listening at the same time. You're just listening. And I think that's quite a good thing. I mean, recording really does make you a better player because you have to listen back to what you've done, and if you hate it, then obviously you're not doing what you want to do. So I suppose a lot of it is just been trial and error process over the years of like notes that I like to land on, things that I like the sound of. I like the sound of, you know, root, fifth, ninth, you know, kind of minor seven sort of stuff, you know, harmonic minor, that kind of thing. They're always things that I gravitate towards, natural minor, pentatonic, you know, and they're always things that I try and use. But yeah, because this chord I suppose is going to be like F sharp minor, I guess we're playing over. I mean, if you just kind of take that chord in this context, all you're really doing is you're playing single notes of what collectively would make up a chord, and that's essentially what you're doing when you're playing lead. So really what you want to do is you want to target notes that also fit in the chord that you're playing over as well, because then you can't really fail to land on a bad note. There are notes that are better than others to land on, but if you are playing in the key and you hit all the notes that you're supposed to be hitting, then I guess you can't really go far wrong. It really is down to your own musical intuition as to whether or not it's the right thing for the song or not, and that comes with a great deal of natural ability and also working and learning on solos, how to write solos, how other people approach the way they play. So I mean, you know, guys like Petrucci and Andy Timmons and all that sort of thing, I mean, you know, they're guys that I listen to and I really like the way they phrase. So this next passage is kind of indicative of that, if you like. So, I mean, I'll just play it anyway. Okay, so I mean, even on its own without the backing or anything like that, you can kind of hear, you know, the intended melody and probably the chord progression if you can hear things in your brain. I mean, quite a lot of the time with writing and stuff, I hear songs in my head. I mean, I'll be pushing a cart around Sainsbury's or something, doing my shopping, and I'll have started the shop, and then by the end of it, I'll have written a whole song in my head, and then I'll have to go home and get it out because it will keep me up at night. But that's generally how things work in my brain. So when I'm playing lead and stuff like that, I'm always constantly thinking of melodies and opportunities of, you know, where to go and what to do. And I guess that's probably what helps in the development of how I write and how I do, you know, stuff melodically. But you know, there's things that you can do phrasing wise which make, you know, rather than just going sounds bland and uninteresting, and no one's really going to want to listen to that. But you know, you can take the same notes and do like slides, pull-offs, hammer-ons, bends, palm muting, using down picking to pick out notes. You know, using pick scrapes to go into bends rather than just bending a note, which over years of I find it hard to just do that, to be honest with you, without going. When you see guys like Gary Moore doing things like that all the time, Andy Timmons, anybody that plays with real aggressiveness, like Zach Wilde, I mean, you know, you'll never hear him end a note and go, it sounds like, you know, did I mean to play that note? Did I, you know, I'm tentatively sort of like working my way through it. Whereas, you know, no, I've ended a lick and I'm going to, you know, end on that note. You know, you've ended on that note and that's where I'm ending, and I'm letting the world know that that's where my solo ends, kind of thing. I mean, I'm always a great believer of playing with conviction as well. You want to play the guitar as hard as possible a lot of the time, because it really invokes a lot of expression and that kind of thing. You know, you don't want to just be tapping the guitar or, you know, lightly playing it. Some guys get away with it, but for me personally, I like to attack the guitar quite a lot, because I feel like I'm more in control of the instrument when I'm dominating it. You don't want to be dominated by the instrument. It needs to be the other way around. That's how I approach a lot of my lead work and style and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like, you know, that playing that chord and then picking out the notes, I mean, you've got, so if someone just played that chord and then you went, you know, they're all things that I like to target when I'm trying to create melodies, and you'll probably see that quite a lot over the. I mean, you know, this is just talking about my approach to this particular backing track, which there's 4 others, so there's going to be similar sorts of approaches just because that's how I play. But I like to try and pick out those notes, add in like, you know, hammer-ons and pull-offs. you know, let melodies breathe as well. That's something that I see a lot of guitar players do. They have like this kind of devil-may-care, willy-nilly approach to playing, where they're just looking off into the ether, and then they're just kind of going, like, you know, just concentrate on what you're doing. Like, you know, look at the lead, you know, listen to the backing track. Actually, you know, really focus on what it is you want to try and achieve, and then do it. You know, that's really the only thing that I can sort of say about playing guitar, is like, focus on what it is you actually want to do. It doesn't matter if it's like, if you want to alternate pick, there's loads of things that you can do. Like, you know, if you want to be able to do that, work on that. But that's a specific thing, you know. But it's one thing, you know, there's one lick actually in this song that does something like that. You know, if you want to be able to do that, then focus on it. But then what I would suggest to you is find a musical vehicle in which you can use that style of playing, because otherwise it's sort of, you know, a bit redundant, really. So, I mean, that's pretty much how I end that phrase. It's like, I mean, I'll play the part again, and then I'll play that bit on the end, and then hopefully you can see where that would fit in. Okay, changed a little bit there slightly, but also that's something else that can happen live. If you've worked something out, it might go horribly wrong. So you kind of need to have, I don't know, contingency licks or techniques that you can call upon that you can play, but the audience isn't going to look and go, oh yeah, he massively messed that up or whatever. You can kind of, you know, fall back on some of these things. But yeah, I mean, I don't know really. It's just one of those things. Like, I'm sitting here trying to express to you how important it is to think about your melodies and think about where to place technique, how you approach certain melodies. Is it right over the backing track? You know, but these are things that you need to be answer. You know, you ask the question yourself, but then I think you need to be able to answer it yourself in order to know that you've progressed. Because if you listen to a melody and go, yes, that is the melody that I want, or listen back to it and go, well, it's a bit shoddy, but, you know, at least I had a go, kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, I've never had that attitude towards guitar playing, and I think that probably makes the difference between having something that's okay and something that actually you play and you get a kick out of, and obviously other people get a kick out of as well. So hopefully, you know, some of these lessons will inspire you to kind of concentrate more on, you know, your actual content for solos.